Hello, this is Dr. Helga Hambrock. I'm from Concordia University, Chicago, and today I'll be talking about virtual learning within a quality seamless learning experience design. This is a great honor for me to be part of the conference, and I am looking forward to working with you today. So I will be taking you through a few thoughts, and I hope at the end we can have a few questions. So, first of all, we'll be looking at the quality education, the SDGs, the challenges in education, what is student-centered learning, instructional design models, seamless learning, virtual learning, and then the conclusion. Right. So, first of all, we want to look at the goal of education. Now, the ultimate goal of education is quality education, right? And the Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations, the fourth one is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So, this is really the ultimate goal that we have. Now, if we look at education at the moment, there are so many challenges. There are so many new things that are coming into our world, and we need to include much more than that it's currently available in our classrooms. For instance, we need to look at the culture. We need to include experiential learning, using technology more, student-centered learning, fun, all these aspects that have not really been included into learning to ultimately achieve quality learning. So most of these are focusing on including the student, focusing on the student, this mental health, his health. We want to hear his voice. We want him to be, develop a partnership. So it's really, those are the challenges that we have. Now, before we go any further and addressing the challenges, we need to ask, who is the student? So how does the student learn? If we want to achieve quality learning for him, we need to know who he is and how he learns. So, looking at research, we know that learning happens through our senses. And the senses that, sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, well, very often we can't smell when we do online or so, but the experience stays with you the more senses you use. Here you have another diagram which explains that if you have a visual channel and your auditory channel, those work together, then your memory will move from working memory to long-term memory. And this is what we really need to achieve as educators. So we can move the content from the short-term memory into from the prefrontal cortex and all these other organs that I will be talking about quickly, and then neocortex into the neocortex. So let's have a look at where these separate sections are lying and what enters our brain through which area. So in the prefrontal cortex, that's really where the visual and the spatial perceptions lie, and this is where our short-term memory is. And then from there, it moves the experiences or the memory moves into the neocortex, and that is like our hard drive. That's our permanent storage, and where our memories are stored for a longer period of time. And then the basal ganglia. This is where our emotions are processed. The cerebellum is here where our fine motor is controlled, like holding a chopsticks. And then the hippocampus is the episodic memories. Um, the hippocampus is here, where if a student is in your classroom, that's maybe one event, and he'll remember that one event. But if you want them to learn a complete section and remember the whole section or the whole term, that's when we want to build on those episodic memories so that it becomes a long-term memory. And then the amygdala, this is very interesting, where the emotions are stored, and it's where if we can include more emotion and more fun into the learning, the student will also have a deeper experience, and that will be combined with all the other senses, and then from there, it moves into the basal ganglia, where the emotions are processed and where learning is processed as well as movement. And then from there, it moves into the neocortex. And it's said that with research has found that the movement from one into the neocortex is when we sleep. So that's very interesting. And then the next step is really to think, how is learning taking place with technology? So how does our brain absorb or can be linked with technology? Now, after the Second World War, Robert Gunn to make sure that Army air pilots would learn how to use machines, and then he designed a process where he started with designing, and then a development stage, and then finally he would test if they would understand what he wanted them to learn about the machine. And from there, a design model evolved, and it's called the ADDIE model, which at first you analyze the environment and you now analyze what the student needs to learn. And then you need to design what the student has to learn and how will he learn it. Then develop the whole learning intervention, then implement the intervention, and then evaluate. And this would be a cyclic, process where you learn from what is missing and then add that again into the analysis side. And then another very interesting model that's used for designing is the Bloom's taxonomy, and it also relates back to the brain, where you know that the lowest level of learning is to remember, well, to understand really and remember. So this is when you use behaviorist learning, where the student is just repeating until he keeps it in from it moves from the short term into the long term. But we also want it to be higher learning, where you would be able to apply the knowledge, analyze, evaluate, and finally create. So all these two models are really the base. There are many more sophisticated models that are built upon these, but if you want to design learning, we want to think about those two as our base. Now, we spoke about seamless learning at the beginning. Now, you may wonder what seamless learning is about. Seamless is really seamless from one environment to another. So the learning takes place when a person experiences a continuity of learning and consciously bridges the multifaceted learning efforts across a combination of location, times, technologies, or social settings. So it's really important to know that when we design learning, that there will be opportunities for the student to learn in a formal environment as well as an informal environment, in the classroom as well as outside the classroom. You could be able to go out of the classroom and do some experiential learning and then bring that back into the classroom. He can learn as an individual, do research on his own, and then come back in a group and have group learning. So we really want to bring in as many different aspects so that the learning is deep and it stays for a longer period of time. Now, if we look into the future and also where we are at now, we are really in a very interesting time. The fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and we need to ensure that when we design for quality education, that we include augmented realities and virtual reality. And thus, I had this topic for today, which is virtual learning in a seamless learning context. So, if we include augmented reality and virtual reality correctly, they can elevate the educational experience. And I'll be showing you some videos as examples. And the technology innovation can be critical to engaging and effectively teaching students. But if it's not designed correctly, it can become extremely distracting and overwhelming. So we want to follow a scientific approach so that the learning is happening and quality learning is part of the whole learning experience. And in order to be able to bring all these interesting learning concepts together into one framework, we did. I was part of a research project where we have. At first, we started with five countries, and now we included 13 countries, where we identified five concepts that are very important if you want to design for a seamless learning experience for the student. And the core concept Well, I'm going to go through each one of them and then give you a quick example of how would that look like if you would include technology and maybe virtual learning. So the first one is the core concept, the core learning concept, and it includes the pedagogical approaches. And I've mentioned that before. The behaviorist approach is one of them, and it may be necessary in the first part of a course where the students learns the terminology and repeats it over and over. And then you may have a constructivist approach where the students create his own reality, and we're going to have an example of experiential learning there, as well as exploratory learning. So there are many different learning pedagogical approaches that one can include in the learning experience of the student, and one needs to decide which ones are the most effective for a specific learning environment. So let me just show you this one. These videos, there will be videos in most of them, and you will see that at this point we are using one specific service provider, but it's not about the service provider. It's really about how will we be including technology so that deeper learning takes place. And this is about William and how he learned with technology.
The stereotype for Compton is you had to leave this place and you had to go to somewhere better. I met William in the sixth grade, and from the beginning, he wanted to explore things. Let me see your program. He could speak, but I think he still didn't have that confidence. My first time witnessing the Verizon Innovative Learning Program, Mr. Gonzalez actually put a robot in my hand and gave me a tablet, and he let me code it and move it around. That opened my eyes, and I realized how cool this stuff was. You don't see my kids represented as much in those STEM fields. They have a lot of challenges on the outside. I still think that we have hope in this place and we can still fix it. And so, what can we do about it? For the City of the Future project, what we did is we presented what we would want Compton to be like. We could become a city that's more known as something good. We're not just like moving away from the community, but actually going in and helping the community. These are ideas that are coming from them. They're going to shape the world. For the Verizon Innovative Learning Program, my voice matters. I'm thinking of being a computer or software engineer where I could use that tech to actually carry out the ideas that we have right now. Now my classroom is a place of innovation. I dream that one day there's going to be a Mars colony and there's going to be faces that look like them there. You can still see that there's still a lot of light for Compton left. Now is the time to think about the future.
Okay, so that was an interesting example of including technology so the student has a more experiential learning experience. Um, and then the next one is the positive concept. So in this case, the core concepts that was where the professor or the teacher included experiential learning activities. With positive concepts, this is really about um, motivating the student so that he is really interested in his learning. If we don't have the buy-in of a student, and we can design as much as we like, and we can teach as excellently as we want to, but if the student's not interested, we have lost him. And so we need to be very, bring in more innovation for the student himself. You could hear how excited that boy was about, that young man was about using innovation. So here's another example of innovative learning. So this is really to improve their positive approach.
Christopher has always loved creating things. Okay, guys, today we're going to test my roller coaster. When Christopher was in third grade, he was denied access to the gifted education program. He was crushed. He wondered what was great about it. So we learned about the Verizon Innovative Learning Program. Little did I know that this program was just the spark that Christopher needed for his fire to burn bright again.
We were making things move, like paper models move with engines, and we're making like robots and stuff.
I saw a difference in his confidence. He could just be himself. I often wondered what drew Christopher's interest in aviation. And sometimes things are greater than us, beyond our understanding. This is a photo of my grandfather. He was a Tuskegee Airman. Seeing what my grandfather embodied every day manifest in him. Like I couldn't have written a greater story.
I thought I only had one future, but now I know I have many possibilities.
Okay, so this is an example of a very motivated, very positive young man who initially wasn't very excited. So that was a positive concept brought into the learning experience. So the next one is the practical and technology concepts that need to be included in the learning. So technology obviously is very important if we want to go into the seamless learning mode where the student can experience their learning in different environments. But we don't need to go for the highest level of technology. I mean, the examples that I've shown you, and if we talk about virtual reality, I mean, we're taking it a step out of the class and into the world of technology. But very often we are in situations where we may not have access to that. And then we use what we have. For instance, WhatsApp, where you can do a little video and then the student can see it on their WhatsApp. Um, there are different ways of being very creative and being creative with what you have. So the practical aspects need to be considered. Um, and I'm going to show you something where the student was using it's using technology, but you could also just use just what he had um, to learn. So this is just an interesting one about creativity, being creative with what you have.
I was always in his life. His mom was a single mom. At 10 years old, she was killed in an automobile accident. So he just automatically came with me. He loved technology, filming, and theater.
3, 2, 1, action. I remember the Verizon Innovative Learning Program coming into our school.
He was thrilled to death. Mom, I'm going to learn all about filming, music, mixing.
I know Giovanni's been through a lot, and he's incredibly creative. Through the Verizon program, I got to see a side of Giovanni that I wasn't aware of, and we ended up playing music together. I think we formed a much stronger bond than I would have ever imagined.
Mr. Marlowe has been my father figure. He's a big reason why I love music.
The Verizon program allowed us to explore music in a much different way than what we've
Okay, so this is an interesting example where technology was used to let me just take this back again, to learn more about music and being creative with music and also filmmaking and so on. But one could also use maybe just a guitar, and let me see if I can go forward. Yes. Okay, so then the next one is human concepts. So now we've done the practical concepts and we looked at the um, positive core concepts and also human concepts. Now here is an example of a teacher. So as I said before, it's not only the student, it's also the instructor. So if the instructor he plays a huge role in contributing to the success story of the student. So when we design, we need to consider the instructor and he needs to know what he's doing with this technology. Okay, so here's a short clip of an instructor that used technology.
Manu was always so shy and not very outspoken.
अमेरिका में कई बच्चों के लिए
Growing up, always like so quiet. I always had that like curious mind, but I never broke out of my shell.
Manu was one of the first students in the Verizon Innovative Learning Program. It totally changed our school. It changed the culture of learning. And it allowed, most importantly, for students to become leaders.
Suddenly I get exposed to this technology. It was like, hey, this is where you belong. Today, I'm a senior at Temple University, majoring in information science and technology. Technology has really evolved in sports. You have that team that works behind the scenes and is looking at how did the force of impact and the velocity of this hit through the player back or to the ground. That was a good one. Technology is prominently dominated by males. And women, we need to get up and break this because we all have that inner techie in us.
Okay, so that just an example of how a student became a teacher in technology and how she now is again very motivated to continue with using technology with her classes, and obviously the classes will benefit from that. So this takes us back to the last one, and that's a design. And it takes us back to where we started with how are we designing. So we need to base our design on research. For instance, the ADDIE framework, Bloom's taxonomy, always thinking about the student in the middle, and then always asking, when should I include what? So which ones of these concepts will I include, or let's say, which parts of this concept will I include? And if you want to read more about each one of the concepts, we have written a book about this. Actually, there are two books already available, and there's an article in press where you can learn more about the seamless learning. And now, this is really a map of what we talked about today. So first of all, it was what is the sustainable goal. The fourth one is to ensure inclusive, equitable, quality, and to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And really thinking about how can we include virtual learning, virtual reality, and giving the students a seamless learning experience, which is aiming at quality lifelong learning. And these are steps that one can follow to remember. We went through all of them that we can follow so that we know that we are doing having a critical framework that can help us to design student learning for the future. So, and that's where my presentation ends. Thank you so much.